when St. Paul was writing to his Galatian converts in the province in Asia Minor, from where his first letter was enshrined in the New Testament, he told them a good deal about his life, in particular about his career as an apostle. And at one point he writes, "I went up to Jerusalem again." Those words strike a chord with me. June and I first went to Jerusalem way back in 1987, and within 2 days of getting there I was saying to her, "I'm coming back. I'm coming back here again." And so I did next year for sabbatical studies. But you don't want to hear about what I did in Jerusalem. You want to hear about what St. Paul did there. So, as Saul of Tarsus, he was there first of all as a student, not an undergraduate. In present-day terms, I think we'd say he went there to do his PhD under the supervision of Gamaliel. And noticing that he wasn't put off by the crowd lynching, stoning to death the Christian martyr Stephen, the leaders of the Jews took advantage of the keenness of the young man and had him arresting Christians all over the place and sent him, as we know, to Damascus to do the same thing. Well, then we have the story of his conversion and so on. But Paul, and when he was known as Paul, a Christian apostle, went back to Jerusalem a number of times, didn't he? It wasn't the first centre for his work as an apostle. It was at Antioch, if you remember, that where he was working there with Barnabas, that the name Christian was first coined to apply to those who followed the new way. But back to Jerusalem he had to go time and time again. I wonder why. Well, you'll notice, no doubt, that while in many cities he has to reject the Jews, he has to shake off the dust from his feet, it says, more than once, and say to the Jews, "You won't listen to me, so I'm going to talk to the Gentiles." But when he goes back to Jerusalem, it is very much as a Jew, as an observant Jew, as one who carries out purification rituals, as one who takes vows, as a Jew. He goes back to Jerusalem because it's from there that he learned. From there came the faith that he learned, the faith that taught him about God, the one true God, whose Son incarnate, Jesus the Lord, he had come to believe in and know himself to be an apostle sent out by him. Jerusalem then was somewhere where he went, for example, to have a question decided about the Christian faith. Do you have to become a Jew before you can be a Christian? And the first council of the church, the meeting in Jerusalem that decided that question, said, no, you don't. And Paul was very clear that he did not have to ask Gentile converts to become Jews in any way. In fact, he rebuked Peter, if you remember, at one point, because he said, "You have no right to make the Gentiles copy Jewish ways." But he himself stuck to the Jewish ways like anything. Paul remained a Jew all his life as a Christian apostle, and he valued very much the heritage of Judaism that he carried with him all his life. Towards the end of his life, when he was probably already an old man in terms of those days, he hadn't been to Rome and he wanted to go to Rome. But where did he make for? He made for Jerusalem. And at every stage of his journey, someone came and said, "Don't go there. Don't go there, Paul. You'll be in trouble if you get there. You'll be put in prison. You'll perhaps be put to death. Don't go to Jerusalem." But to Jerusalem he went. And there it was. He was arrested, handed over first to the Jewish and then to the Roman authorities, and finally had his way of going to Rome out of desperation, because nothing was happening about his case. Out of desperation, he appealed to the emperor. He was a Roman citizen and had the right, when his life was in danger, to appeal to the emperor. And so he had to be sent to Rome to be judged by the emperor. The Jewish observances that he valued so much have come down to the present day, modified, of course, as particularly after the destruction of the temple, soon after Paul himself was martyred at Rome. And the Jewish observances are of great are a great draw to the Jewish people, because they involve doing something in one's ordinary domestic home and family circumstances. Things are done. And while the greatest of the Jewish festivals, which happens in the spring, the Passover, is concerned with the ancient history of the Jews when they were a nomadic people, escaping from Jerusalem and wandering through the desert for 40 years. The last festival of the Jewish year, Sukkot, or Tabernacles, is very much part of a settled agricultural culture. And one of the rules of Sukkot is that you mustn't eat indoors, remembering that in the old days the whole village would have to turn out to the fields and camp out through the days of harvest to get everything in before the rains came. Today, in affluent Western Jewish Jerusalem, the most expensive flats are built with a balcony with struts over it, so the week of end of September or beginning of early in October, this week in fact, leafy branches can be stretched over those struts, and the family can eat out there, fulfilling the law of Sukkot, eating out of doors, observing the harvest in that way. And I suppose for us too, harvest is something that means a great deal, because we do something about it. We take things to church, we give things, and that is something that means a great deal to people. We do things. That's something to do with the reality of worship, isn't it? Worship isn't just a matter of sitting and thinking. It isn't even a matter of standing up and singing. It's a matter of doing things. It always seems a great shame to me that we've got into the habit of sitting down to say the Lord's Prayer. When Jesus taught his followers the Lord's Prayer, they certainly weren't sitting down. And I'm sure if we can have the confidence to believe that Jesus taught us that God is our Father and we can speak to him, we can stand with confidence before him, perhaps with our hands outstretched to him, to say, Father in heaven, your name be hallowed, your kingdom come, your will be done. We come before God in confidence to do things for him, and taking our inspiration perhaps from the way the Jews did things, we build our worship around things that we can do. The heart of our worship, after all, is a meal that we enjoy together. We do something, and God is there in the midst. And where do we go to do it? Well, we think all the time about Jerusalem, don't we? We think so often that the place is perhaps the wrong word to use, but the goal to which we are striving is symbolized by Jerusalem. Jerusalem, where Jesus went to be killed, where Jesus went because it was there that the prophets are stoned. It was only in Jerusalem that a prophet can properly be put to death. We think of Jerusalem as the place where we are aiming for, to be with God, to be doing his will, to be living for him, and, of course, eventually dying for him. So let's think of Jerusalem in words written by an English believer over 400 years ago. Jerusalem, my happy home, name ever dear to me, when shall my labours have an end? Thy joys when shall I see? O Christ, do thou my soul prepare for that bright home of love, that I may see thee and adore with all thy saints above. Amen.